Hello, welcome back. Let's keep going with uncertainty reduction theory. So we were saying that when we reduce uncertainty, we're inclined to perceive people in a more positive light. Well, how the heck do we actually reduce uncertainty? Well, the original researchers actually came up with 8 different axioms. Okay, your book does not include these, and there's a reason. Some of them are pretty straightforward and commonsensical. Like, for example, one of them is called nonverbal warmth. And so essentially what it says is the more nonverbally warm one of the communicators is, the more nonverbally warm the other will be, which then increases our chance of talking with each other, which then makes our uncertainty go lower. Okay? So there are these 8 different axioms. I'm not going to ask you to know those. I just want you to know the idea behind uncertainty reduction theory and these next 3 strategies. Okay? So overall what happens is with uncertainty reduction, we will usually act in one of 3 ways. Okay? You've got the passive, active, and interactive, and the names do not exactly give it away. Okay? It's a little bit confusing. So the passive strategy involves observing the person or observing the cause of the uncertainty, okay? And you observe them interacting with other people before you decide to interact with them, okay? So for example, this is where Facebook stalking comes in. This is where you don't say anything to them at first, but you kind of watch and see how they act at the meeting, or you watch and see kind of how they are with their friends, and you kind of see how they are, okay? That's the passive strategy. Now, that doesn't always sound passive, right? You're actually still doing something, but that's passive, okay? The active strategy is you talk to someone else about the object of your uncertainty. So let's just say you've got this person in class you're sitting next to, you think you might like them in that special way. They've got something about them, but you're not really sure. You need to reduce some uncertainty before you actually talk to them. You would talk to someone else about it, okay? And then the interactive strategy is you actually talk to the person, okay? And you self-disclose information and you interact with them in a one-on-one way. Either sometimes this does include interacting on social media, or you text them, or you talk to them in person, okay? And ultimately, though, remember the idea behind uncertainty reduction theory is you are going to communicate with them, okay, or someone else, all right, to reduce uncertainty. Our primary compulsion during an initial interaction is to reduce uncertainty, all right, by gathering enough information about them that their communication becomes predictable and explainable. So this is the main idea behind uncertainty reduction. So if you choose uncertainty reduction for your artifact paper, you might be looking at someone who is finding information out before they go and interact with someone, or you're dealing with 2 people who are coming together for the first time or the second time, and they continue to reduce uncertainty, all right? Oftentimes, social penetration theory and uncertainty reduction theory go hand in hand with each other. And so if you've got that going on, you can still pick one to explain the theory, but you can use concepts from both theories to explain what you're seeing in your artifact paper, okay? So that is our first 2 theories. We've got social penetration theory, which, by the way, I didn't say this in the last screencast and I meant to, is in Chapter 2, explained on page 56. Uncertainty reduction theory is in Chapter 3, explained on page 78. All right? I've tried to go into a little more detail than the book does, but in the next one, I am really going to go into a lot more detail. So I need to pause and open up a new PowerPoint, and then I'll pick back up. All right, so here we are now with relational dialectics. This is our 3rd theory, and I can't believe how quickly I'm going through these. This one's going to take a while, okay? Buckle up. First of all, it's my favorite theory, and I can talk about it for a week. Secondly, there's just a lot to talk about with relational dialectics, okay? Let me say this. If you're having a hard time picking a theory, pick this one. If you're not quite sure which one fits, pick this one. If if you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to have enough to talk about, pick this one. This theory is so rich, it's so good, and it gives us so much of an explanation of human behavior in communication and in interpersonal relationships that that it's hard to really capture, okay? So let's start, all right? So relational dialectics. I will explain what a dialectic is here in just a minute, all right? And it's not dialect, okay? A dialect is, a version of a language. This is a dialectic. Dialectic is different, okay? So let's start with this quotation, though, okay? Pascal, you may have heard of him, kind of a big deal, says this: contradiction is not a sign of falsity, nor the lack of contradiction a sign of truth. Now, I'm not sure how you would feel about this quotation. There's some really cool stuff in here. And what I'm going to have to say for relational dialectics here is that Pascal is right. Contradiction is not a sign of falsity. One of the things you're going to see as we get into relational dialectics is that actually contradiction in many cases, when you're talking about relationships, when you're talking about sort of life in general, contradiction can be more true than a lack of it. I'll say that again. Many times in life, when you really start to think about it, contradiction is going to be more true than a lack of contradiction. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that contradictions are always okay. That's not true. Okay? But many times, when you really start to think about it, contradiction is going to be more true. Okay? Because if you even go into, and by the way, this idea of a dialectic comes from philosophy, and this idea of contradiction is that the very idea of life is a contradiction, because life is lived toward death. We are beings toward death. That's what Heidegger says. Okay, Heidegger or Husserl? I'm all of a sudden not sure. It's Heidegger, I'm pretty sure. Okay, but we are beings toward death, and so even the fact that we have life is a contradiction. Okay, so contradiction, we have to start to think differently about contradiction to understand relational dialectics. Okay, so let's dive in. All right, so relational dialectics comes from two thinkers, two researchers, two theorists, Baxter and Montgomery, in the 1990s. There's all sorts of different dates you could put here. I think your book actually cites 1990 or 1993. They did a lot of different publications in the 1990s explicating this theory. So this is one of the newer theories, okay? And it's really indicative of postmodernism. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. But it says that things are a little more complicated than we've led ourselves to believe for a while in relationships. Okay, so we're talking about intimate communication and close relationships. Okay, Baxter and Montgomery do a really great job unpacking this. They reject the idea of discovering a scientific law. Some of these prior theories were trying to discover scientific laws. We were talking about uncertainty reduction. We've talked about social penetration so far. We haven't done social exchange. Social exchange was all about laws and trying to find equations, okay, which you'll see. And there's truth there too, okay? So Baxter and Montgomery say relationships are messy, okay, and there are no formulas. Now, one of our theories, and we haven't done it yet, but we will, actually has a formula. And it doesn't mean the formula is wrong, okay? Ultimately, we have to kind of take a contradictory look at relationships to really understand how they work, okay? So for relational dialectics, though, the central idea is this push me, pull you, okay? And a dialectic is a contradictory tension. So when we say relational dialectics, we are saying relational contradictory tensions, all right? And this links to our Pascal quote that we talked about at the beginning. Many times contradiction is going to be more true to life than a lack of it. So for example, these are ads for Fiat, all right? And I think that's how you say it, I don't know. Good things come to those who wait. That's true, yeah? The early bird catches the worm. Crap, that's true too, yeah? So which is right? Well, they both are. Even though they're contradictory statements, they're both correct. Okay? Same one here. Stick with what you know. Throw caution to the wind. These are both good things to apply to your life. Does it mean that you have to toss one out because they're contradictory? No. It means that life is contradictory. It means that these contradictory tensions exist in the way that we live our lives all the time. And so relational dialectics is about contradictory tension. And we call it a push me, pull you because it's the push me, you push me, I pull you. And we're constantly in this give and take with the people who are in our lives when it comes to contradictory tensions. And when you really think about it, this idea of contradictory tension is at the center of our interpersonal relationships, okay? So contradiction is the central concept of relational dialectics, okay? And if you define contradiction, this is how it's defined. The dynamic interplay between unified oppositions. And that is what we are going to be doing with relational dialectics. We are going to take two things that are in opposition to each other, and we are going to unify them, and we're going to study how the push and the pull between these two things is what makes a relationship, okay? And so it's extremely powerful and extremely important when you start to really grasp relational dialectics. And folks, the idea of the dialectic now has been in, you can go back to Socrates. Socrates has dialectic. You can come up to Marx. Marx has dialectic. You can come all the way up to this and further. I mean, the idea of the dialectic is not new. What Baxter and Montgomery did is they were able to take tons and tons of research and actually tease out and articulate some of the unified oppositions in interpersonal relationships and communication. Okay? So the basic premise is this, all right? Personal relationships are indeterminate processes of ongoing flux. That's theory language, okay? And it's really cool. The personal relationships, personal, okay? Not impersonal, interpersonal, okay? All the stuff from previous chapters that we've done so far can come to bear here, all right? They're indeterminate, all right? So they're constantly changing, constantly fluid, all right? Now, yes, there are some things that you can see and predict, but they're indeterminate. They're ongoing, all right? Every personal relationship faces the tensions between certain things. Now, your book is going to call some of these things slightly different, and that's okay, because there have been different articulations of the theory over time. But every interpersonal relationship faces these tensions, and it's going to be especially relevant in your romantic relationships. It is relevant in your friendships, but you have to be good friends, okay? We're talking more on the, like, we're really interpersonal here. With social penetration and uncertainty reduction, you might be in the early stages and stuff like that. And relational dialectics are still present in the early stages, but to really see these, you can get deep here, okay, in the relationship. So integration, separation. So folks, you have a need as a human being for integration in a relationship. It's a need. We all have different levels of that need, okay? So, you know, if you're more of a dismissive attacher like me, then your need for integration is still there. It's just not going to be in the same way as one of the other connectors. And by the way, I'm more on the secure side now, but I still struggle with dismissiveness, just to be clear, all right? So these are the three sort of overarching big tensions, okay? Integration, separation, stability, change. You have a need for stability and you have a need for change. You have both. This is the essence of relational dialectics. You need integration, but you also need separation. You need stability and you need change. You need both. These are contradictory ideas. We are unifying them, and we're showing how they push and pull on each other, okay? We're not even to the breakdown of these yet. These are just the big sort of beginning ones, all right? And expression and privacy. Hello, self-disclosure again, okay? How much do you share versus how much do you keep private? And even in your most intimate interpersonal relationships, you have a need for privacy alongside your need for expression, okay? And what this theory says is that bonding occurs in both interdependence with and independence from the other, and that is what you see in these three big dialectics. So now what we're going to do is we're going to unpack the forces and the way